Hello, in today's video, I am going to share with you how I built a sustainable Airbnb business on the African continent without owning the properties. This is my second live stream, and in case you cannot watch till the end, I will record it and upload it in the end. And yeah, I decided to do more live streams because I feel like I'm able to connect more with my audience, which I really enjoy. I think I discovered a new passion. So if you're watching, let me know in the comments from where you are watching, which country you are based, and yeah, let me know what questions you have because yesterday, unfortunately, which was my first live stream, I didn't plan well. My laptop's battery was empty and I had to finish real quick without being able to answer more questions. And so, yeah, today I'm much more better prepared. And yeah, I hope I get to know some of you. Maybe you can share where in the journey you stand right now, if you're already hosting on the African continent, or if you're planning to start an Airbnb, or if you are still unsure if this is the right business model for you. So, yeah, today what we are going to cover, I want to address some questions that I receive repeatedly, which are, for instance, people ask me all the time, especially those who want to invest in Kenya, Nairobi to be precise, should I rent or buy a property? And as the title says, I don't own a single property. I rent them, and I will explain to you why I believe that this is the best approach. I believe you should start small, and this will allow you to grow fast. And the second question I get most of the time is people ask me if they should rent a furnished or an unfurnished apartment. Another question I receive so many times is how do I find the right property? And so I will share with you the strategies that I used to find my properties. And last but not least, a question, or let's say, um, a fear. It's a fear, right? And it's justified, this fear. Many people ask me, Wayne, if the landlord can see that he can do the Airbnb business himself, right? Why would he allow you to do Airbnb if he can do it himself, right? And so, yeah, that's a very, very common question, a justified fear, which I want to address. And indeed, I know of a case from a person I know personally who who rented a house in Zanzibar, transformed it into an Airbnb, put so much effort in it, renovated it, invested a lot of money, and then, yeah, the landlord saw how profitable it is, and then, yeah, kind of harassed my friend. So, with the goal that she will terminate the lease agreement. And also, yeah, he was terrorizing her basically. And so, with the goal to take over the Airbnb. And I will explain to you in the end what went wrong, why this happened, the mistakes my friend made, and also how this whole thing ended. Now, yeah, if you're new to this channel, my name is Wayne. I'm the host of this channel, Plan Back to Africa. And in this channel, I basically share my journey of leaving behind Europe and relocating to the African continent. I was born and raised in Germany and then moved to the African continent to start a new life and start an Airbnb business. And on this channel, I share my experience, my knowledge, the challenges, the mistakes, how you can manage an Airbnb business remotely, and things like how to build a team, right? A loyal and an honest team. And also, if you're hosting already, I share my tips on how to optimize your listing and maximize profit. Now, having said that, let's see who's in the chat. Hello from Texas, Tigraina Media. Salam, salam. Hello, just moved to Kenya from US and interested if you can share your lawyer's info. Lawyer for what? There are lawyers for different topics. Is it for immigration or is it for business registration? Vegapix, ich würde gerne übersiedeln, am besten nach Kenia, aber meine Kinder wollen nicht. So this person was asking, I would love to settle ideally Kenya, but my children don't want to move to Kenya. Yeah, it's difficult. If you have children, it's a tough move. I was lucky because when I moved to the African continent, my kids were still very small, had no real friends. My daughter was 4 and my son was 2. No, my daughter was even 3 and my son 1.5. And yeah, the older they get, the more difficult it gets. And in the first, I would say, 6 years, right, you can do that. But now, for instance, my daughter is 10. She has so many friends here in Kenya. She loves her school. uh, if it's not really necessary, if there is no other way, I wouldn't want her to lose these friendships and move. So I understand how difficult it is. Then we have a question here. Do we need a residency to do Airbnb business in Nairobi? That's a very good question. It actually goes the other way around. So when you run an Airbnb business anywhere in the continent, you can, you, sorry, what you definitely need to do, because you cannot just apply for residency, right? Sorry, I choked on the tea. So, okay, let's start again. So, I don't know of any country where you can just register, apply for residency. Usually it goes the other way around. If you want to start an Airbnb business, right, you are generating revenue in that country. So you must register a company in that country. That doesn't mean that you need a residence permit to run an Airbnb, especially if you are managing it remotely. Like, for instance, for my Airbnbs in Zanzibar, Tanzania, we have registered a company, right? And we have the business permit. However, since I'm not based in Zanzibar and I manage it remotely and I have my local partner on the ground who is the face of the company, I don't need to apply for residency. However, if I decide to one day, for whatever purpose or benefit, to acquire residency, then having a registered business, a registered company is the precondition to do so. And so, yeah, you must have a local company, or you can also register a foreign company. But you need to understand that's in most African countries. I don't know of any exception. Of course, we have 54 African countries, but I know from the main destinations where people want to invest, like Ghana, Kenya, South Africa, that if you register a foreign company, so if you're not a local, a resident, if you don't hold citizenship in that country, then the minimum capital investment that is required is usually very, very high. And it also depends from country to country. In Zanzibar, Tanzania, it's 2.5 million US dollars. And you must prove this amount on a local bank account. And that means also that you're registering a foreign company where you are technically the sole shareholder. The other way around is by registering a local company together with a trusted local, like a partnership. And so you can decide, in some countries there are laws, right, that prescribe a minimum ownership of the shares to the local. In Tanzania, Zanzibar, it's 70%, and for the foreigner, 30%. But I must also say, here, with the right lawyer, there are also ways to secure, your investment. So, it's you need an experienced lawyer who's familiar with this process, who can draft a shareholding agreement and a business plan and a company registration, who knows about the whole process, in a way that the local cannot just say, okay, now I claim 70% of the assets of this company. So, and in Kenya, I think there is 0% share. Anyways, I always recommend to give a minimum share. It should always be this a business on the African continent. I believe should always be approached with a win-win mindset, if that makes sense. Now, getting to the next question. Thank you. I'm happy you like my content. Okay, here is Alicia from London, exploring Airbnb as a way to create income for herself and her 6-year-old son abroad. What's the most effective first step to start hosting without owning a property? Okay, let's dive straight into today's topic. Now, as I said, I was able to build myself a profitable Airbnb business without owning a single property. I now operate and manage 10 Airbnb listings, mainly in East Africa, and actually exclusively in East Africa. I was planning to expand to Ghana, visited in 2020, then COVID hit, and yeah. Anyway, that's for another episode. So the best way is people ask me, should I rent or should I buy? And I always advise them to rent first. Start small, because that way you can scale much faster and you have cash flow. Imagine, would you rather invest 100,000 US dollar into buying one property, or and like putting all your eggs in one basket, not knowing if it will really even succeed, right? Or do you do you would you rather invest and rent 5 different properties, rent them, furnish them, and then you have, you know, 5 different also case studies. Of course, you should do your research before, and you are more secure, because in case one of the Airbnbs isn't performing well, and let's assume you have done everything you can to optimize it, right? Because many people also make the mistake, they think after they have furnished that apartment or house and it's not performing well, that yeah, it's because of the neighborhood or whatever. But I believe it's because they didn't do a proper market research, and also they didn't understand on how to optimize. There's so many things to consider. People think you list your Airbnb and the hard work is over, right, after furnishing. But that's when the hard work starts, to be honest, right? And it's a game where you have to be constantly optimizing, learning, improving, upgrading. And but let's say you have done everything. If you have rented that property, you can still terminate that lease agreement. And let's say the other one is performing very well. And so you can terminate that lease agreement and invest into a new property in that area, right? Which is not easy when you have invested and bought a property, right? And so I always say, start small, start by renting, understand the business, have a company, right? Have all papers ready, right? And then you can, from there, you can expand. One of my friends, which we also consult, came to the island of Zanzibar, started with one property, rented it. And this business model, by the way, this business strategy, because there are different ways to operate an Airbnb business. And the strategy to rent and then list this property on Airbnb on a short-term rental basis, right, is called rental arbitrage. And so he started with this rental arbitrage strategy and it worked out. And then they got a second property, which they also rented, and it was going very well, still going well, going better and better even after we started consulting and optimizing his listing. And he has now purchased a plot and started building, right, in the same area. And so I think this is the best way, the smartest way to go, to test the market, see if it works, see if it's profitable, and then scale. Now, before I get to the next question, let me see. Okay. Somebody's asking about the meaning of Airbnb. So Airbnb, it started in San Francisco. The founders of Airbnb, there was a high demand because of the events, the tech events that were happening there. All hotel rooms were booked out. And so they started out. That's also funny. They actually came to San Francisco to start a business, and they were still looking for the perfect business idea. And while they were there to cover the cost of living, they started renting out when there were events and conferences in the city. They rented out air mattresses to travelers, right? And that's how they came up, and they saw how profitable it is. And then they came up with the concept of it's basically the concept of home sharing. It's the same like car sharing, right? So Airbnb, to understand what this is, they came with the name Airbnb from the term air mattress, bed and breakfast. And so Airbnb is just a software, it's just a platform, but it's not the only one. It's the easiest one to enter the game of short term rentals. So we are here basically dealing in the short term rental vacation market. And so there are so many different platforms. Also, a big mistake that Airbnb hosts make. They sleep on them. They sleep on them. There is not just Airbnb and Booking.com, and they all have their benefits, downsides, but there are also markets that target Asian travelers, right? Many people are sleeping on that. People coming to visit Africa from the Middle East, VRBO, for instance, is more being used among US Americans, right? And so there are so many ways to include these platforms and then to maximize your occupancy. However, I think Airbnb, why I'm a big fan of Airbnb, even though, for instance, in one of my properties, I don't rely on Airbnb anymore because it worked so well, and I got so many recurring customers, and now it's just running by word of mouth, basically. And so I was able to delist and save me the service fee that Airbnb charges. And I think ultimately the goal is to have your own platform, right? You can, if you're a content creator, social media person, you can market your property among your followers and so save a lot of money. But yeah, that's basically what the short-term rental business and Airbnb is about. What are the challenges you have faced running an Airbnb? What type of visa will I need as an American citizen to start a rental business in Zanzibar? So that's a good question, and that's basically the process that we are helping many of our members right now. Because in case you don't know, I built an online Airbnb course with a private community, and there are also U.S. Americans who are investing in Zanzibar, and it depends. There is a investment by there is residency through investment program. It's called, also known as the golden visa. If you purchase a property, apartment or house, villa for a minimum of 100,000 K US dollars, you get the residence permit. But if you don't have that capital, right, the easiest way is to register a local company with a local partner. And there's also so many things you need to consider, because it's really not easy for foreigners, especially, even if you do a joint venture with a local, right? And then basically you register the company. I think the government fees are around $600, and then you have legal fees that you have to pay for your lawyer, and that's when once you have registered a company, that's basically the first step, right, for this Airbnb business. And then if you decide, I also want to reside in Zanzibar instead of managing it remotely, which is absolutely possible, right? That's what I've been doing for the past five years. And so if you want to reside in that country, when you have the registered business, you can also in the next step apply for the residency. And as an US American citizen, you don't need a visa to register the company. So you enter on tourist visa and then find a property and then register the company. Now, before I go to the next question, how do you actually find the right property and what is better, furnished or unfurnished? And now, also here, my answer is clear. I would never go for a furnished apartment because they are usually, and it makes sense, much, much more expensive, right? The landlord has already invested and he's actually ready to host himself or herself, right? And so the cost is much higher. Instead, I would go for an unfurnished apartment because that also allows you to design the property in a way that helps you stand out. And these days, especially in saturated markets like Nairobi, Cape Town, Johannesburg, what have you, even Zanzibar, having a unique design, offering an experience and not just a place to stay is the only way to stand out. Okay. And so definitely I would go for unfurnished just for this reason alone. Second reason, as I said, the rent, the lease agreement, the monthly rent is much, much more cheaper compared to a furnished apartment. And yes, that's basically the best way to start. Now, if you're interested in how to furnish an apartment, I have an episode on um, with a cost breakdown about furnishing an apartment in Nairobi, a two-bedroom apartment. And I'm planning to make an episode on a cost breakdown of how much it cost me to furnish a two-bedroom house on the island of Zanzibar. So the question now, the big question, how do I actually find the right property? And so the key here is you need to do a real deep research, a market analysis. And that's how you will find out if you should go for a one bedroom, two bedroom, three bedroom, 10 bedroom villa. And so there are different strategies on how to approach this. There's also so many tools which I don't really recommend. One tool that is always recommended, especially like in YouTube tutorials that focus more on the Airbnb market in the US and in Europe, is AirDNA. However, there are different reasons why AirDNA, the data that they produce, are not really accurate for the African continent because they can only work with data of people who are registered on, who are using this tool, who are paying for this tool, right? And since that tool is not really common, you will not get accurate data. But instead, I suggest as an easy strategy for, especially like if you're starting with a small budget, right? Or if you just want to get an idea without investing into expensive tools, you can just simply research on the Airbnb platform itself, right? Of course, given that you must have a country in mind, otherwise your research will be endless. So yesterday in my live stream, I talked about strategies on how to choose the right country. And I talked about why so many African Americans and the diaspora who move to the African continent, why they don't stay, why they leave and go back to the US, Canada, or Europe, right? Is because the initial big mistake, right? They built on shaky foundations by choosing the wrong country. And it's the same with the Airbnb business. There are, you should be aware of the laws, rules, and regulations of each country, right? You should be aware of the approximate costs to rent a property. And then you should have the numbers. And you can get the numbers easily when researching the competition on Airbnb. Let's say you want to start an Airbnb business in Nairobi and you don't know which area is most profitable. And so you have like the most popular areas. You type in two-bedroom apartments, look how many listings are available, right? What is the competition doing right? What could you improve? And be honest to yourself. Like, if you go through the listings, is there anything that you could do to stand out, right? Do you Sometimes it requests capital to be able to stand out, right? Because if you see that the competition that is making money is in high-end luxury buildings, have a swimming pool, a gym, then that's the minimum that you should have to be able to succeed in this specific neighborhood. And you should always ask yourself, what kind of property do I have to have, and experience I have to create, that makes potential guests choose me over the others, choose me over hotels, right? Because why would anyone even choose you, an Airbnb, over a hotel in the first place? A hotel that offers breakfast, cleaning service every day, um, what have you, a gym, beachfront, pool, right? So there must be something that a hotel can't offer. And so you have to research that properly. And you can do that by analyzing your competition, looking at the best performing listings. That's easy. It's important that when you go to the search bar on Airbnb, let's say you type in Nairobi, and then it's important that you choose, instead of the exact dates, you choose flexible, because then it will show you. Otherwise, it will only show you the properties available in the selected period of time that you chose. But if you chose flexible, it will show you basically all listings, especially the best performing listings. And then if you want to see how which of these listings are making money, right, which are not just ranking up high in the search results, but who are actually making money, you can filter your search and then slide the price bar up to the upper 50%. And that's when you see the listings that really make money. And then you have to study them, analyze them, go through the reviews. So many people are sleeping on reviews. What are people saying about this place? What type of traveler is coming to this place? And this is very important. And because through this analysis, this deep research, you will be able to understand what type of traveler is coming to this specific area or country, a neighborhood, city, island that is underserved, right? And so you basically, the goal of this research is not to determine the perfect property, but also who your ideal guest would be. Are you targeting families? Because you maybe realize there's so many Airbnbs, but not enough Airbnbs that can accommodate families, right? Who have kids friendly amenities. Or you will maybe realize that when you, let's say, for instance, you can filter two bedrooms, then you can filter three bedrooms. And then maybe you will realize, if you filter four bedrooms, that there are only 200 listings, instead of, like, for instance, if you look for a one bedroom or two bedroom, you will see in the search results 1,000 listings. It's not just them that are your competition, but all the hotels out there too, right? Who offer a room for two people. And so you will see, when you have filtered, let's say, three bedroom, four bedroom, the competition is smaller. And then you go to their calendar, and then you can see how many bookings they have, right? You can only see that in advance. But if you want to see how many bookings they had in the past, right? Because sometimes they also get last minute bookings. So just because the calendar is empty in the future, it doesn't mean that they're not getting bookings. So you go to the reviews and you can select and filter most recent ones, and then you can see the dates, the months, and how many nights approximately they stayed. And that's also how you are able to get an understanding of their occupancy rate, how many nights they are booked. You check their prices, right? Their nightly rates. And so that's how you are able to understand where there's a gap in demand. And then if you see they have a lot of bookings and there are only 200, 100 listings serving this particular group, a group of group trips, 8 people, families, that's when you know, okay, this is my ideal customer, my ideal client. I want to target these groups. And then you ask yourself, how can I become the best option for them? How can I beat the competition? What do they need? What can I offer them that the others are not offering? And that's when you know, okay, let's say you have a big group, you're targeting big groups. Then you know what you have to look for when looking for the right property. You need minimum 3, 4 bedrooms, right? You need a garden where they can like have some, quality time together, barbecues, outdoor cinema, all these things, right? So you understand what groups who travel together need, people traveling with children need, and then that's how you should ultimately look for when looking for the right property. And then, of course, you have to do the math. You have to understand, okay, is it really profitable? How much is the average rent? That's when you start like doing some calculations to see if it's profitable. You have to understand what are my running monthly costs, right? You have to do your research about whether you need a security guard, what is the average salary for a full-time cleaner, who do I need, how much does internet cost per month, electricity. And so then you have your number. Let's say you have a rent of $600 per month, including running costs and including a full-time cleaning person, right? And then you have to understand, okay, 600, and then you divide it by 30. You understand how much you have to make per day to break even. And then, of course, like if you can break even below 10 days, right? Like let's say you only have to rent out, let's say you rent out this property for 60 euro per night, right? Then you just need to rent out the apartment for 10 days in a month to break even, and everything above that is profit. So that's how you can calculate. Let's go through some more questions. Oh, Solo Soul, Shalom, sister. I started in 2024 after seeing your video. I'm so happy to hear that. Really, congrats. Wishing you much of success. Hope it's going well. And if there's anything you need help with optimizing, post it here in the comment section. I'll try to answer your question. How much money would I need at minimum to start a tech company in Africa? I am not qualified to speak on this matter. I can only share what worked for me and my own experience in the short term rental industry, unfortunately. Here is someone who is a host in Switzerland and wants to expand into Africa. Yeah, the first steps to do so I have already explained. So you need to do your market research. And, one thing I always tell people, you have to be on the ground, you have to feel the vibe, visit different neighborhoods, look at different properties. Oh, what do you think about Rwanda? Tigraina Media, we have one member in our community who will start in Rwanda. We have another Habesha lady who has listed her property, her first property in Rwanda. She's also a member, and After 1 week of joining our community, she got her first two big bookings. It's going well. Very profitable market. Tourism industry is growing. Rent is still low, you know? So Rwanda looks very promising. I'm planning to visit next year, definitely, since we also have many members in our community. I think three, four who are just want to start in Kigali. And yeah, I definitely want to visit next year. But there are also others who are interested in Kigali, but four already have like made the first steps. Um, what else? What else? I'm Kenyan in US, Kenyan coast or Tanzania? Which is better cost returns? So I am not familiar with the Airbnb market here on the Kenyan coast. I would say you have to do your research. Tanzanian coast could also work, you know. You have to see what type of traveler is coming there. It's mostly travelers who combine a safari with a beach vacation. And so it really depends where in Tanzania, where in Kenya. Um, I felt like Malindi in Kenya last time I was there, and first time I was there in 2019. I didn't really enjoy it, to be honest. It felt like a ghost town and really dominated by Italian travelers. So I didn't feel the vibe so much. Oh, yes, the internet has improved in Zanzibar. Yes. I don't know for those who follow my YouTube channel for a year now. Last year, I planned to actually, my plan was to maybe stay in Zanzibar. I tried my best, fam. After 3 months, I was just like, I couldn't wait to leave because I depend on stable and fast Wi Fi, right? That's how I operate and run my Airbnb business. And also, as a content creator, I was struggling to even upload a reel. Can you imagine, like a 60-second video? And so, but this year, when I was there, it has really, really improved. And yeah, everything is improving. You can really see if people always say Africa is poor, Africa is underdeveloped. But when you actually go and visit a place frequently, you will see that they are not just making one step, they are making like 10 steps, right? Like the development there goes so fast, it's incredible, really. It's difficult to catch up. And with the development, also new investment opportunities come up. Oh, nice question. Peace and justice. Hello, Wayne. What do you think about an Airbnb in Makunduchi? Makunduchi is on the southeast coast of Zanzibar. It's one of my favorite places on the island. Is a very, very traditional area. So you have to see what experience can I create, because right now the areas that are booming, right, are Nungwi, Paje, Jambiani, Michamvi, not even Michamvi, but Buiju. And so maybe you can create something and build on the advantages, the uniqueness of this particular fisherman village. And for me, the uniqueness lies in its how can I say, very traditional way of life, right? I love the soil in Makunduchi. And even I remember when I took my mom, right? My mom is Habesha, Ethiopian from the Tigray region, and she grew up as a farmer. And she was, when I brought her to Zanzibar for the first time, she was tired of seeing the ocean after 2 days. She told me, please, Wayne, bring me where the farmers at. I want to see the real life. I want to see how they, how they farm, what they harvest. I want to be among the farmers. That's where I feel more comfortable. And then I brought her to Makunduchi, and she really, really loved it. Like they have this red soil that you see mainly on the mainland of the African continent, and there's a lot of farming activities, also cattle herding. One time I remember that was also funny. Um, I have one tradition I took over from my mom. She taught me that whenever we inaugurated a new Airbnb, we did major renovation, she always have this ritual. She says, it sounds brutal in English. In Tigrinya, it means it's like bringing blessings. Uh, بقع حارت قالنا دم كنفس سلو قالنا we have to spill some blood, you know. And so she wanted me to buy a goat, and I was like, where can I find a goat? I've never done this on the island. And then they directed me to Makunduchi because that's where you find the goats. I bought a goat, and yeah, she invited all the workers, the fundis, the landlord, his family, children, and then someone slaughtered the goat, like sacrificed, and then she made a big barbecue. So Makunduchi, I'm going a little bit off topic, but Makunduchi I think has potential, but you have to do your research also there. Study your competition, look what you can do better, which experience can you offer. Maybe you can create something very unique that nobody does, like an Airbnb in the middle of the village. And that's also when you will be attracting, because it's important that they respect the conservative lifestyle of the people, right? So it's your job to make sure they don't run around in bikini or miniskirt. But with the right marketing strategy and listing description, you will also target the right people. Maybe people who want to experience the real, authentic village life of Zanzibaris. Yeah, good evening. What are your thoughts on starting Airbnb in Ethiopia, Addis? Well, you know, the thing is in Addis in Ethiopia, it's a difficult market. It's a difficult market because first, for foreigners, everything is very difficult in Ethiopia. The country is slowly opening up to foreign investors, but right now they are really protective of the economy there. And especially where I see the biggest problem is the prices of real estate there. It's, I think, the second most expensive country on the African continent in terms of real estate. So rents are extremely high. But if you manage to get an Airbnb in Addis in Ethiopia, right? I always say when a market is difficult, right? It's also very profitable because it is difficult, not many people are doing it. And so your competition is very low, mostly very unexperienced, and is operating quite unprofessional. So if you're able to navigate the laws, the rules, regulations, right, then it's very profitable. But right now, the country is going through an extreme inflation. Yeah, so yeah, you have to be very mindful about that. It's not the easiest market, especially if it's your first Airbnb. I wouldn't recommend that. Now, to then another question. I didn't finish speaking about how to find the right property, right? So if you're on the ground and looking for properties, right, it's always so important to do your due diligence, right? So not just visit during the day, also during the nighttime, because sometimes a very idyllic place can turn into a nightclub in the night, right? And so yeah, it's important to visit at different times of the day. And you know, there is a Zanzibari saying, a wisdom, one of my favorite sayings in Swahili, which I was really reminded of last week. And this saying goes like haraka haraka haina baraka, which means fast fast brings no blessing. And so this basically means that when making such important decisions, because you're about to make a commitment, an investment, right? It's very important not to rush and do your due diligence. And last week, for instance, one of our community members, also a diaspora guy, Congolese, based in Berlin, came to Nairobi to look for a property. And I thought, okay, I just came back from Zanzibar. I said, I have some time. He shared his excitement that he found the thing, and he was so, yeah, he wanted to sign the lease agreement fast because he wanted to lock something in before he leaves. He had, I think, only 4 days left. And from what he shared, it sounded too good to be true. And what I learned, if something sounds too good to be true, it's because it probably is. And so it was a very good area, Lavington, one of the more expensive neighborhoods here in Nairobi. And I decided, come, I'll take my time, allow me to take a look and advise you, give you my honest opinion, you know? So we met and went to the property. The moment I walked in, I saw one red flag after the next. You know, it was just a place where there were 40 units crammed all next to each other. So noise complaints by your Airbnb guests guaranteed. And also it was like one bedroom studios, very affordable, and that's why I got skeptical. Per unit, I think they asked for 35,000 shilling, which is around 270 US dollar. For that area, actually a very good price if you're a little bit familiar with the real estate market in Nairobi. And so when I saw it, I understood why. It was a very small studio. He planned to take on two studios right next to each other. And I asked himself, look, what do you think, what kind of tenants will this place attract? Right. Young people, first own apartment, invite friends over, drinking, partying, you know. And also besides that, we one thing that I always recommend you when visiting properties, that's I never leave the house without a tape, a meter in my bag. I always need to take measurements. And so he didn't do that. And then I asked one of the construction workers to hand us over a tape. I measured the bedroom with him because at first sight I could already tell no way there's no way a king size bed can fit in here. And so we took the measurement and I was right, not even a queen size bed. And so yeah, I gave him my honest opinion and he agreed and he was very grateful because if he had signed that rental agreement, you know, he would have paid for that mistake. The consequences would be, yeah, difficult anyway. So was able to connect him to other members in the community who work with real estate agents. And I think he found something. I need to follow up. Anyway, this was really a big reminder again for this wisdom. Fast brings no blessing. Really don't rush into these commitments. You know, you need to really do your due diligence and understand what type of people this area attracts, the neighborhood, you know, because that's one thing that you cannot control, right? Okay, what other questions do we have? What do you think about having Airbnb in Uganda? So, my business partner, Marvin Greifenberg, if you don't know him, follow his channel. He gives great insights. We've just launched the community together. He comes from a business consulting background, and he was in now right now he is in Zanzibar for some yeah, business operations we are running there. But 2 months ago, he was in Uganda, in Kampala, to consult a business there. And of course, he was also doing research on the ground, stayed in different Airbnbs. And yeah, I think Kampala could be also profitable, but I personally cannot tell you how the tourism industry looks like there. It's always important if you look at places like Uganda, places that are not really business hubs, where you also have a lot of international travelers, where not many conferences are happening, like in, for instance, Nairobi, Addis Ababa, Johannesburg, Lagos, right? Dakar. Um, I think Uganda is more a tourism destination, if I'm not mistaken. At least I don't know of any headquarters, international organizations having the headquarters there. And so you have to see if the tourism is really seasonal, right? That also means that you will have a business where you only earn income seasonally, and you might have a zero occupancy rate during the low season. So you have to also always study the season when you, especially when you are in tourist destinations, right? But I believe, yeah, absolutely, it's definitely worth a look, and especially from what I saw, at first sight, I could tell there's not many professional Airbnbs, like who really are doing a great job with an outstanding and unique design and listing. And whenever that is the case, know that, yeah, it's easy to beat the competition. Okay, now, last but not least, we are, wow, the time flies. 51 minutes. Wow. I must say, I enjoy live streams much, much more than YouTube videos. I actually hate making YouTube videos, but yeah, we still, I always remind myself I treat it as a job. You can also not say, I don't like to go to the office tomorrow, right? And yeah, you do what needs to be done. And in the end, my biggest reward is if there's someone out there who found value in it, like Solo Soul, right? Who started his Airbnb because of my YouTube video in 2024. That's my biggest reward, that makes me so happy, because I want to see all of us win, and there's room for all of us. We shouldn't gatekeep, we should uplift each other, share our knowledge, And that also brings me kind of to the last question. Many people ask me, well, Wayne, there is the high risk that when you start an Airbnb, rent a property, that the landlord will steal your business or not. Like, why would he allow you to Airbnb his property if he could do it himself, right, or herself? And now, why this concern is valid, you need to understand, to minimize the risks, you need to understand what are the intentions, right, of the landlord. So I really take my time to understand. I have a personal conversation with the landlord, like in my cases, right? And so, from my experience, most of the landlords, what they actually want to have, right, is having their payment on time every month, a secured payment, right? And most of the time, they are not even in the real estate business themselves. Like, for instance, one of my landlords, he's a teacher. Yeah. And I know him since 2008. I met him when I was a student in Zanzibar. And then he owns a lot of land, right? Prime positions, really, like very humble man, has no car, just a very old Vespa motorbike, and he leases out lands to big investors, beachfront, and also he built these two houses that I rented from him. And so from day one, I never gatekeep. I included him even in the business and created a win-win situation. He is very business minded, has several businesses next to being a teacher, right? And he has a boutique, he has a restaurant. And so I suggested, let's offer delivery service to my guests. No one does that here. And so I was able to also support his business. And now we are working on exhibiting some of his souvenirs and things that I pre-selected in the Airbnb. That's a great way to upsell, right? So I'm making more money out of one guest, not just by the nightly rate, but also by selling tours. He's also connected to the fishermen because he's a real local Zanzibari, and some of his relatives are fishermen. So they deliver fresh fish, they do snorkeling tours, right? And so now he has as I said, the property is big, and now, after me advising him and after seeing that this business is profitable, he started building his own units, right? And that is because he know he can count on my help. And I will advise him. I'm advising him. I'm basically advising him from the beginning. He started the layout of the property. I advised him on how many rooms he should build, and I will help him in setting up this listing, right? And I want him to win. I don't see him as a competition just because he's next to me, right? And I really believe, like, without being naive, of course, if you come with like good intentions, wanting others to win and to grow with you, right? You get everything 10 times back. I really truly believe in that. When you're a giver, you get so much back, you know? And yes, I mentioned there was one case that happened to a friend where, so she rented that property, she renovated it, and let me tell you, the first mistake that she made was the guy was a host himself, right? He had his unit right behind the property that he rented out to her, and it was going very bad. And he, like, there were so many red flags from the very beginning. And for instance, he he didn't fix the roof as promised before the beginning of the lease agreement. And so rainy season started and he refused. And she didn't really like did her research about this man, right? And also this guy was broke. He was a broke man, right? And so, like, one rule I have when I'm working with people on the ground in Africa, no matter where, I have a couple of rules, but I have, like, I would say, three golden rules. I never work and collaborate with people who consume drugs, who drink alcohol too much. I mean, who are drinkers, you know, partying every weekend, and who are broke. So they must, like, this gives me more security, right? And so this has always helped me. And so this guy was broke. He had a bad reputation, right? And yeah, he was just shady, really. You could smell it from far away. And so she made this house so beautiful, you cannot imagine, right? It's not that she invested tens of thousands of euros or dollars, but she really put a lot of effort there. She did a lot of herself, the painting, the renovating. She built a tree house in the garden, right? And then another mistake that she made is, one thing I would always do is immediately when you move in, exchange the locks, right? She didn't do that. And then the business was going so well because she's like really a brilliant person. She's an artist. She was once even featured in Vogue Italy. And what she created in that place, I learned so much from her. And she also helped me transform one of my properties. She was immediately booked like 3 months in advance. And he became really jealous, like he was a jealous person. And so then he started these dirty tricks, terrorizing her, did horrible things, you know. And then one time she had guests from, I think, Cameroon, and they went to town. In the evening when they came back, they saw the bed was messed up. Somebody had intercourse in that bed, and it wasn't them, right? They were traveling with children, and the worst part was in the bed of one of their children. And so, yeah, one mess after the other. He started acting weird when she confronted him, who has access to that house. And yeah, it turned out that was all a setup. You know, they were trying to, by terrorizing her guests and by also ignoring her, that she terminates the lease agreement. But she refused. And then also eventually, I think it was even him who said, he was acting emotionally, saying, you know what, I don't feel comfortable with you. I have to terminate the lease agreement. This After the first year, she had paid 1 year in advance, right? But they had agreed on, I think, a 5-year lease. And so a big problem that she also made is because she started, really, it wasn't planned actually, and she just started from one day to the next with the own property that she was living in, right? That she rented for her. She actually rented it for herself in the beginning, and then transformed it, and then tested out Airbnb to see if it's going well, and then because it was going well, moved to another property, right? And so she rented it as a tourist, right? Because she was there on a tourist visa. And so the best way to protect yourself from this kind of scam is not by renting as an individual, but the best way to protect is renting it on the name of the company, having a legal company, right? Renting the property on the company's name, because that way you can also take them to court and sue them, basically. But that way, yeah, she was in a difficult position and she was tired and eventually also left the island, sadly. But yeah, understand your landlord, understand what he does for a living, right? Then you will see if he's having his own business somewhere and he just wants to have a stable income, he just wants to have someone there who pays his rent on time, right? You can sense that, right? Understand who this person is. I mean, especially in rural places, right? But in cities like Nairobi, um, I haven't heard of any case where that happened, right? Sometimes you go through a real estate agent and all you need to have is the written consent and permission in the lease agreement that you're allowed to sublease that property. But if you're working in tourist destinations, beach destinations, right, where it is mainly short-term rental properties, you have to understand where this person is coming from, who that person is, right? Understand also the traditional systems and structures of governance, because for instance, on the island of Zanzibar, they don't only have the official legal system, but they also have like a very traditional governance system where there are selected elders for each district, called shehas, known as sheha. And so that's why I always advise. We have a couple of members in our private community who are investing on the island of Zanzibar, and I advise them, all of them, to include the local sheha of that particular district into the process, into the leasing agreement process. In my cases, the sheha was even the lease agreement was signed in front of the sheha with the sheha as witness, and he himself also signed. So understand the local structures, right? And systems of governance, not just like the legal official way, the colonial way. So yeah, that's how you can basically save yourself. And then yeah, I must also say, many people have that fear, but that fear is really unjustified. And on top of that, I forgot how to say how it ended. He thought he would take over that beautiful property. You know what she did? She brought two friends of her to bring that property back to the state that she had taken it over. Right? She destroyed the roof that she fixed, brought it to the old state, painted all the walls, her art, right? It's her art. So she painted them all in white, and she destroyed the tree house. In the end, you know, people think, even if he had taken over the property as it is, right? The hard work is not just like in designing and furnishing a property. The hard work really starts when you start to host, understanding how guest communication works, understand how to optimize your calendar, Pricing, right? Pricing. Like you have to really understand the pricing strategies and how to use tools for that, right? And yeah, having a nice property doesn't bring you anything. We have hosts in our private community that we are consulting who have beautiful properties, but they have a low occupancy rate, right? They don't get any customers. And so, because, yeah, having a great listing is key. And besides that, the property management is, you have to understand how these platforms work. Yeah, that's it so far. I hope you enjoyed today's session. I did, right? It feels more freely, more natural for me to do live streams and also get to know you, get to connect with my audience. And yeah, I'm giving maybe 2 more minutes to answer the last two questions. I haven't also gone through all of them. Um, How do you get the landlords to agree with you subletting their properties? So that's actually the easiest job, right? What is more difficult is negotiating a fair price, right? And so uh, there are certain strategies I use. For instance, there is a way to, as I've mentioned earlier, you can, for instance, if you trust that person, right? um, Try to incorporate his business into your business, create a win-win, and that way you are also able to negotiate a better monthly price, because hey, you're not only making through the monthly rent, I'm bringing you customers for XYZ business that you're running. So you can convince them by seeing how you could work together, like treat them as partners rather than as just your landlord. And that way they also, take ownership. For instance, in my case, the landlord took over the role of the property manager and I gave him a commission for each check-in because I was not on the ground, right? So other ways to convince them is, like if you really have a landlord who is skeptical, right? I had that case, for instance, also one time, that he said, oh, but I don't want people to come in and out and they will destroy my property. It's actually the other way around. Long-term tenants, when you have long-term residents, the chance that they will mess up your property is much more higher, because when you have short-term rental guests, right, you constantly maintain that property. You constantly, just for the next guest, just let me give you an example. Yesterday, my one of my cleaners called me and said one of the windows broke down, right? Some residents, long-term residents, especially local ones, they kind of sometimes careless and reckless because it's not their property. They don't care, they don't give a damn. But because I was expecting new guests the next day, I had to immediately act, bring a fundi to fix that window. And so I always convince them that, by allowing me to sublet your property on a short-term rental basis, your property will be always maintained on a high standard, right? We paint regularly. After every rainy season, we paint the house and we constantly upgrade the properties. In one case, even I had the skeptical landlord. I was able, especially when you have a portfolio, if you have something to show them, I brought a portfolio because that was a very difficult case. I showed them, look, this was how that property looked before, and this is what I made out of it. Second case, this is how the property looked like before, and this is what I transformed it to. And then he saw, wow, this will increase the value of my property, right? And she is really taking care of it, and she knows what she's doing. And that's how I was able to convince my landlord in one case, for instance. Do you recommend locating your Airbnb in tourist areas, safari, or capital or major cities for business travelers? Um, you know, I did both. I am doing both capitals and tourist destinations. The benefit of capitals is that you not only attract people traveling for leisure, but also people traveling for business, right? And so also these major cities have not real seasons, right? Whereby tourist destinations like places like Zanzibar are very seasonal. You have two peak season, a low season, and so you have to really research the market and see where there is a gap in demand, and that's how I would approach which is the best area. So one last question, then it's time for me to sleep because it's 20 past midnight now. I've answered the question already. What visa do you need for Kenya to do Airbnb arbitrage? You need to register a company. You need to register a company, and ideally with a local partner, right, who can act as your co-host and the face of the company on the ground. And then when you manage that Airbnb remotely from your home country, which is what I recommend, that is the best strategy. Let's say if you really want to like if you want to build a cash cow, a sustainable business on the African continent that can sustain your lifestyle, that can finance your relocation, right? The best way to go about it is first start an Airbnb business on the continent, which you can manage remotely and it's very easy, right? And once that is profitable, right? After mostly one is not enough. It depends. If you have like a luxury penthouse that brings you 10,000 per month consistently, right? Stable, then you can it can one property can do. But in my case it was I did what they call reverse engineering. I calculated the cost of living for my children, school fees, rent, insurance, groceries, all the costs, and took that number and then I went backwards. How many Airbnbs with what I have right now, right? How many Airbnbs do I need more to build more on the continent to reach that goal? And it was only when I reached that goal that I then moved to the African continent. And yeah, I want to end it on that note. Relocating to the African continent was the best decision of my life. I thank God, really. I'm so grateful. I just spent 5 weeks in Germany. The children spent 5 weeks with their father in Holland, and I stayed with my mother in Germany. And it was a reminder, a perfect reminder of why I left in the first place. People are burnt out, stressed, aggressive. They are just like it was sad to see, and people struggling, trying to get out, but because of the rising cost of living, not even, yeah, because that's what they think. Like many tell me, yeah, I would like to relocate, but I don't have time to invest. I don't have any money left in the end of the month to invest. I think you need to be more strategic about it. One advice I give people who struggle and who really have no money and want to start a business, I think the first thing that you should do, decide on a fixed amount each month, right? That you put aside. That can be $50, that can be $100, that you only use to invest in yourself, right? Whether through online courses, building a new skill, right? Invest that in yourself, a skill that you can make money with. And then when you have acquired that skill, start making money with it. And then you will have the money to invest into a business on the African continent. And I really wish that for all of you, if you wish that for yourself. I know many people don't intend of moving to the African continent, but if that's your wish, I pray for you and that you succeed and that you find peace and freedom on the African continent. Yeah. Thank you for watching, fam. I enjoyed the live session very much today. And yeah, I might come back tomorrow. Let me know what you want me to talk about, what I should speak about next, if there's any specific questions you have, and I'm happy to answer them in the next live. And yeah, bye. Good night from Nairobi.